welcome everybody. My name is Dana and welcome to Hot Girls Know's first live interview. We are so excited to have Dr. Meg Lowman with us today. I just want to let everybody know if you have any questions for Meg as we go along, you can just tap the little questions down by the comments to the right of that. And you can just submit a question for Meg. So Dr. Lowman is a pioneer in biology and research of the trees. She is the executive director of the Tree Foundation, as well as the founder of Mission Green, which has a mission to save the rainforest and the planet. So I am going to bring Meg on up, and then we're going to have a lovely conversation with her. So let me just give me 1 minute and I'll invite Meg. Okay, and while we're waiting for Meg to join, happy Earth Day, everyone. Hi, Meg.
Hi, hey there.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure. You guys are amazing. Thank you for all you do for girls in science, and that helps boys too.
Absolutely. So yes, Hot Girls Know was launched in the fall of 2020 to spring STEM and fun facts, easy to know things, and also promote women. So, and we know you're a big promoter of women in science, Meg. So we just are thrilled to have you here with us today.
Well, happy Earth Day too. It's a great day for me because we hope that everyone's thinking about the planet and the trees and the bugs and everything else.
Absolutely. So Meg, why don't you tell us what got you interested in your field of work?
Oh my gosh, you know, I was kind of a geek as a child. And I did love nature. I was pretty shy. And so I guess I took a lot of comfort in going out into the woods and finding birds and rocks and snakeskins and all sorts of crazy things. So I really did grow up in a small town without technology, admittedly. We didn't have internet, of course, and not too many TV stations, and it was black and white anyway. So I really loved playing outdoors. And I think Mother Nature was my inspiration as a kid, and still is my inspiration as a big kid.
Excellent. And you grew up in upstate New York, correct?
I did. Elmira, New York. I think there's some Elmira folks out there, and there's Elmira College, which was one of the first women's colleges, and probably that was a little bit of a good influence at one point in my life, watching all those students.
Absolutely. So you said that you were interested in the outdoors. When did you actually learn that this was a field and a career to go into?
Do you know, a long time later, number one, I never had a woman science teacher ever, which is pretty crazy. And number two, I didn't know girls could be scientists because of that. And there weren't too many examples, to be honest. Most of the textbooks are full of Louis Pasteur and Henry Thoreau and all these other guys that did science. So I thought maybe I could be work in a national park, or maybe I could, you know, be in a forest ranger. I don't know why I thought that, because most of them were guys too. But it really wasn't until much later in my life, after I started, you know, going to college and grad school, that I looked around and thought, I want to figure out a way to work outside, but I'm just not sure how.
And I know that you're such a mentor now to all girls and women out there, so they have such a role model in you.
Well, I hope I can shortcut their process and they won't have as much frustration as I did.
Absolutely. I think just in your works and the multiple books that you have written, and I know you're always going on speaking tours with all around the world, and even in elementary schools, middle schools, so I know you're really getting out there to be a great inspiration to everyone.
Wherever it's needed or necessary, it's all great. And I'm really excited for girls in the next generation. I hope they can, you know, benefit from our misadventures, as I call some of my escapades.
So Meg, why don't you tell us about, what does a typical day look like for you?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, I've had some different chapters in my life. When I'm out in the field, a typical day, of course, amounts to trying to figure out how to get a cup of coffee in the middle of the jungle, but usually rigging a tree with a slingshot and going up there and measuring bugs or leaves or some such thing along the way, and spending a lot of time with the local indigenous people and, raising trust in villages and trying to make sure that we're really developing important relationships with people. But then I come back from the field and I've had a couple channels of career. Sometimes I was a college professor, which meant interacting with students and teaching and spending long hours in offices analyzing data. And other parts of my career involved museum work, where I got to, as I say, talk to K through gray, everyone from little kids to senior citizens, to teach them about science and try to create the storytelling that is so important now for science. And so those have been two wonderful, different kinds of channels in my career. Now I've been an author. I've been kind of holing up like a hermit, and I finished a book. It's coming out August 10th called The Arbornaut, with Farrar, Straus and Giroux, which is a part of Macmillan. So I hope, girls, you can pre-order it so that you can all benefit again from my misadventures by reading this book.
Absolutely. And you can pre-order that now, as Meg said, on her newly launched website today, canopymeg.com. So I was checking it out earlier today. And one of my favorite features on your website is that you can look at all the canopies around the world and where they're located. I think that's amazing.
Well, good. I guess I'm old enough now to say I've worked in so many of them that maybe that's a nice way for people to have a virtual tour and, catch up. With COVID, they may not be able to go there this year, but maybe soon.
Absolutely. So just for those of you on the live who don't know, Meg constructs these canopies, hence her enduring nickname, Canopy Meg, where you can experience the canopy level of the forest for yourself through really fun, they look like obstacle courses to me, but yeah.
Well, we call them skywalks.
Skywalks.
Bridges, and some have towers, some have mostly bridges, but it is, when you think about it, 50% of the species live up in the canopy on the land part of our planet. So we have to get up there in a comfortable fashion, in a safe fashion. So that's been one of the designs of the tools that I use to be an arbornaut.
And those tools didn't exist when you first started.
No, they did not. Oh my gosh, my mother was horrified. I think I made a slingshot out of metal and I sewed a harness. And this was when I was in Australia as a graduate student. So she didn't really see me every day anyway. But that was the beginning of this whole career of studying the treetops.
Wonderful. So what would you say, if somebody doesn't know anything about your field, how would you describe it to them?
Sure. I guess whereas astronauts explore outer space, I am an arbornaut, someone dedicated to studying the tops of trees. And it's really close at hand. It's probably in everyone's backyard almost, but yet it was something that never got really carefully researched until a couple decades ago. And I think most foresters historically cut the trees down to look at the top. But of course, in doing that, all the bugs and cool things flew away or crawled away or got squished. So we really didn't appreciate the whole forest research. And so my focus has been on what I call whole forest, because that's when we learn really about the value of a big tree, from studying it alive and from top to bottom.
And you have called the tops of trees the eighth continent.
That's right. And again, because it's almost like an Antarctica, it's, previously unexplored before some of us created this toolkit. And it's just so surprising to me. I call it hit you over the head science too, where something that's so close, a tree is close to most people, even if you walk to work in a big city, and yet we didn't really understand it or know what its function was until recently.
Amazing. So I see you have some shout outs coming through the chat just for everybody. If you'd like to submit a question for Meg, you can do so in the little comment next to the comments with the question mark. So feel free, if you have questions as well, to send them on in. So Meg, for the future generation of girls, boys coming in, what advice would you give to this younger generation?
Wow. Well, I would say definitely go outdoors and use your five senses. Even if you become a computer technologist, I think it's really important to observe, to see, to smell, to touch. Nature is so full of lessons we can learn that are both full of innovative and economic ideas, as well as life-saving ideas like medicines and foods and things like that. And I would say, especially to girls, girls need to help girls. I think still in this world that we need to create good mentoring. And I never hope that I will turn my back on a girl that has a question or a need, because it is important that we support each other. It's still women that have the babies and maybe disproportionately take care of the home. And I think they also are taking on professions, and we need women to advance into leadership positions. And we can probably only do that by helping each other and supporting each other.
Absolutely. And that's definitely one of the missions of Hot Girls Know too, is to support women and recognize women and really highlight them, to really show their accomplishments in the world out there. So frequently it goes overlooked.
That's great. Thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. So I see one question that came in that said, how does it feel to be that high up in the sky when you're up there with the trees?
I guess it's the same as being in a skyscraper. I wonder if people on the 13th floor of an office building get scared to look out the window. But quite honestly, it's wonderful. It's fabulous. The air is fabulous because you're surrounded by millions of leaves producing pure oxygen, and the sounds and the smells and the sights are fabulous. It's this amazingly busy place full of all that life doing things, flying and pollinating and flowering and all kinds of things. So it really is quite fabulous. And trees sort of sway, so you kind of have to get into that. Maybe you could get a little seasick, but hopefully not. And I think the only warning is that we don't climb during thunder and lightning, heavy rainstorms, because there is that slight element of danger. But for the most part, it's just an absolutely life-changing experience.
That's wonderful. So I have a question for you. Just looking back on your career, did you ever feel that there was a time where you didn't get credit for your work?
A lot of times. In actual fact, I will say that most of my career was very male dominated. Most of my expeditions oftentimes had me as the sole female. And so the credit, I was happy to just have my name on it. I was unfortunately happy to organize the groceries or the equipment or do some of those roles that are fairly traditional to make sure I got my foot in the door. So the answer is probably I didn't get the credit to do a lot of things that I did behind the scenes, but I was in that generation that was just grateful to give it a go. And I think now more and more there are opportunities for women to get credit. And we all have to, be careful that we don't give all the credit away. I think there's some level within us. I'm a mom and I'm proud of that. And, I think when you're dealing with your own kids, or in my case with students, you want them also to get the spotlight and get a lot of the credit as we get older and more senior in our careers. So sometimes it's good to give the credit away, as well as perhaps other times when I was younger, it might have been a little disappointing to have some of my senior advisors take the credit. But those things I hope will change as women get smarter than I was.
And I know that you will be such a good resource for those women coming into the field. So we have a few questions coming in, and I'm going to go to one. What was your most frightening experience in the canopy?
Oh, what a great question. Well, first of all, I'm much more frightened when I walk in a big city late at night. I am in canopy. I guess I'm not as good as an urban citizen as I am a forest citizen. But I guess maybe my most frightening experience has been confronting ant communities. Believe it or not, there are a lot of biting ants in the canopies of places like the Amazon. Not in every community, but I'm always super cautious to make sure that I'm not disturbing an ant colony and they might come out and attack me. And once I climbed a really, really tall tree in the Amazon and I got to the top and a bird was pecking aggressively at my rope, and I was really relieved that it didn't get through the threads. So there is that business of respecting the wildlife and making sure we're not disturbing them. But for the most part, it's been a wonderful experience. I use a lot of safety protocols. It's like riding a bike or perhaps some kind of kayaking or any recreational sport where you have to adhere to the safety protocols.
Excellent. And that question was submitted by my mom, so thanks for joining, Mom. So that leads me into, you mentioned ants, and I would never think ants in the canopy.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know there are also snakes in the canopy? Very few venomous ones. I've encountered a couple, but they tend to just slither away so quickly before I even get up there that they've never really been a threat. Whereas the ants fiercely defend their little territory, which is actually a big territory sometimes, but they're little.
Excellent. So then we also had a question related to that. Do you ever study anything on the ground?
Well, I do. I always call it my retirement plan, but I did work a lot on something cool called mycorrhizae, the little filaments of roots that connect trees, and also in some cases we believe give an advantage to trees that have mycorrhizal relationships, help them bring up more nutrients and water to their canopies than others. And this was all part of my research on the whole tree. And I've also done a lot of research on seedlings to find out how quickly do trees regenerate, which ones are quicker than other ones. And believe it or not, I studied seedlings in Australia for, gosh, 45 years. And some of them were 4 inches in 1970 and then again in 2010. So in other words, in 40 years, they hardly grew at all. So this notion of rainforests restoring really quickly is very, very false, unfortunately.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. So just to bring it to kind of Earth Day. So do you remember your first Earth Day? And if you
Oh
do,
my
what did you do?
Well, I do. I remember Gaylord Nelson, the pioneer who did the first Earth Day. And of course, I was just heading off to college in those early 1970s when Earth Day started. And we, we're very, I think, naive then. We didn't know rainforests were disappearing. We didn't know about extinction of species. We didn't appreciate that humans were putting carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but we wanted to conserve nature. I think people were quite devoted to that idea. And so over time, Earth Day has gone from being, I think, an exclamation for nature to being a really urgent call to help the planet, which in turn saves humans. So we're really, I think, on a different track now than we were some 40 or 50 years ago.
Absolutely. And that leads me into my next question. So if those of you on the live right now have heard of Netflix's new documentary Seaspiracy, so this is kind of going through the oceans and kind of some highlighting some issues with the fishing industry. So if we were to turn this to the trees, Meg, what would be your tree-spiracy?
Well, and I guess I kind of have one because one of my close friends is a wonderful ocean lady named Sylvia Earle, who
Yes.
runs something called Mission Blue to save hope spots in the ocean. And I've started with her mentoring a movement called Mission Green to save hot spots, which are the canopies in the world with the highest biodiversity. So my tree-spiracy is that we have to hurry up and save those really high diversity forest hotspots so that we don't lose a maximum number of species. And to do that, we're proposing to build walkways and train local girls and women to be ecotourist guides. And in turn, I think local people are the best conservation protectors. It's not as good to write the government that's thousands of miles away, but I think it's really great to work with the people that live in the forest. And we really hope this combination of tourism and a better economy for the local people might lead to good forest conservation practices in these all important sites around the world.
Absolutely. And now, are they just, I know you said that you need to act quickly. How quickly or how fast are
Oh,
these hotspots?
well, we're starting a walkway in Madagascar. I'm excited with my friend Pat Wright, the lemur lady, and less than 5% of their rainforest is left. We're building, we have a walkway in the Peruvian Amazon, but we hope to staff it with women and signage and better marketing. And again, as we all know, the Amazon is probably exceeding its tipping point for health of more than 20% gone. Even in my beloved Australia, more than 90% of that rainforest had been cut down when I was working there. And the reason that most of it, the rest of it got saved was really because they created World Heritage areas out of some of the different regions, little tiny pockets that are left. So there's an urgent need, because even some of those forests that are allegedly protected are now subject to fires with drier, hotter climates and lots of edge effects, which are sometimes very negative.
Wow. And speaking of this urgent need, and now in light of the global pandemic with COVID, how have you been moving your work forward during this?
Right. Well, it certainly has cut back on any field work. It's been impossible to go to Ethiopia where I work, or the Amazon where I work. I had a time to finish my book, so I guess that was the one good news. I could hole up and be a hermit writer and get that finished and packaged up so that comes out in August on time, which is great. And I have been, of course, doing Zooms and doing my best to communicate with my colleagues around the world. It's been a very introspective time to think harder, to fundraise for these important rainforest sites, to create the process that we hope to execute for Mission Green, which is on my website. People can check it out, and really work hard to launch as soon as COVID lifts and people can travel again. We hope that we're better organized and able to really get the job done.
Absolutely. And we're all there supporting your work, Meg.
Oh, thanks, hot girls. No.
So I have a question. There is a question in the chat. This is amazing. It says, Meg, tell them about helping kids in wheelchairs climb trees.
Oh, yeah. I guess it's part of my passion for helping underserved girls and other kids. I had one of the first federally funded projects, I believe, from National Science Foundation, to teach kids who had mobility limitations to become field biologists, because I observed over so many years that with kids with handicaps usually got relegated to the lab. People would say, oh, you stay indoors and take the notes, or maybe, sit in the chair and we'll go out and do all the fun stuff, see the birds, out the bugs and everything else. So I designed a project with a colleague who studies water bears, these very cool microscopic animals in the canopy. And we trained kids in wheelchairs. We recruited them, and we said, you too can become a field biologist if you so desire. And the reason we study these cute little water bears is because there are lots of new species that have never been discovered. So all these college kids could make a discovery, learn how to publish it, learn how to classify and name it. And that was a very successful thing. I took one of my best girls in a wheelchair to the Amazon, of all places, and my local guides helped craft a canoe that she could roll her chair in, and create a special outhouse for her, and all kinds of special things. But the good news is, of course, it's possible. We just have to work at it and be a little bit innovative, I think, to help some of these young people put their brain cells into careers that maybe they too aspire to achieve.
Absolutely. Making the field more accessible to all. I think there's no losing in that situation. It's just win-win-win.
Absolutely.
Taking a look back, I know you've mentioned some kind of your inspirations, and in your book you highlight that. So, dead or alive, who would you like to have lunch with?
Oh my gosh, that's so wonderful. Well, I would like to have lunch with Oprah, because I think she has been a great role model for so many, and she has a fabulous book list, which I would love to get on, and I think she's interesting and fun. And on the scientific side, I would love to have lunch with Rachel Carson, who was a hero for me, because she took on the chemical companies and explained to the world how toxins really hurt humans as well as birds, and that was pretty amazing. But anyone else who wants to help save the rainforest, I'd love to have lunch with you. You can help me build a canopy walkway really quickly, because they're not free. We do have to appeal to corporate sponsors and people who may in their retirement want to give back a legacy. So I'll eat anywhere.
That's great. And one final question that I have for you, Meg, what would you like your legacy to be?
I hope it's giving kids, especially girls, but boys as well, because I'm the mother of two boys, a real inspiration to go out into nature. And even if you don't become a scientist, you need to appreciate nature, know that it keeps you alive. And the best way to do that is to spend some time outdoors, and not just in front of the computer screen, not just in plastic kingdoms like Disney, which is great for its own technologies, but really allowing yourself or having your parents take you to something cool like a canopy walkway or hopefully a rainforest before it disappears.
Absolutely. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to say to the group?
I say, on this Earth Day, get outside and do something wonderful in nature. And if you don't have kids, take someone else's kid. Buy a book about nature. Be sure and read about it. There's many wonderful stories, and share those whenever you can, because we do need the world to change some of our habits. Buy carefully. Don't buy things that really do destroy the planet if you can possibly do some homework and be conscientious about everything from saving big trees in your communities to planting little ones at the same time.
Well, thank you so much, Meg, for joining us today. Again, Meg has a new book coming out, The Argonaut, available on August 10th, but you can pre-order it today. And go check out her website on canopymeg.com. It has been amazing spending this half an hour with you, Meg. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.